Welcome and thank you for waiting. All participants are on a listen-only mode for the duration of today's webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded and may be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the session over to your host from the U.S. Census Bureau, Erlene. Erlene, you may begin.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the May Local Employment Dynamics, or LED, webinar. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's go over a few housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome your questions during the webinar. Please submit your questions using the Q&A panel, which is located at the bottom right corner of your WebEx screen. Once you've found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your questions. As time allows, we will answer your questions directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your questions with the presenter to respond to during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. We suggest keeping the chat panel open as we will provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind, we won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out the links and other resources related to the presentation. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. On behalf of the U.S. Census Bureau and the Local Employment Dynamics Partnership, in collaboration with the Council for Community and Economic Research and the Labor Market Information, or LMI Institute, it is my pleasure to welcome Aisha Sulich as she presents Wage Records Demonstration Project, Multi-State Workforce, Inflow and Outflow. Attendees will explore a recent wage records pilot study conducted in Washington State that follows a cohort of workers over 3 years as they transition between jobs in the Pacific Northwest and different industries. Findings contribute to evidence-based policy decisions and explore the impact of industry changes on wages, hours worked, and job locations. Aisha Sulich is a regional labor economist with a specialized focus on the Southeast region of Washington State. In her capacity at the Employment Security Department of LMI Division, Aisha bridges the gap between complex economic data and the needs of a diverse set of stakeholders, including policymakers, workforce development boards, and educational institutions. She adeptly translates intricate statistical information into relevant, understandable terms, ensuring that labor market information is accessible and valuable to all interested parties. With that, I welcome Aisha.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for this invitation, and thank you also for joining us today. My name is Aisha Sulich, and I am a regional labor economist with the Washington State Employment Security Department. I am excited to present an overview of Washington's Wage Records Demonstration Project, specifically focusing on workforce inflow and outflow trends across multiple states. This project was driven a couple of years back, 2018, 2019, and pandemic really amplifies our need to go through this project and gain valuable insights into labor movements, job retention, and hiring patterns. Washington's Wage Records program is built through a collaborative partnership between states and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Wage Records Demonstration Project provides a state-level framework for tracking employment trends through wage records, helping understand workforce dynamics. By integrating wage records with other data sets, we are able to enhance our analysis and cover deeper insights on hiring, worker migration, and long-term employment shifts within industries and geographies. Additionally, we are able and we are monitoring a couple other projects within state of Washington, aiming to expand our workforce research going forward to support policy decisions and changes, as well as planning for workforce development and integration into the job market. Current uses of wage records program is very exciting, and it's new, and it's in first frontier discovery stages, and so far what we're finding, it is becoming critical labor market tool by offering real-time view of employment trends at the state and national level. This initiative, as I mentioned, which is led by Bureau of Labor Statistics, compiles wage records from over 33 different states that I know of, could be less or more. I will double check with the wage records program unit with BLS, but this is creating multi-state longitudinal workforce data set. The primary goal was to offer national, state, regional, and local analysis to support these decision makers and planners for workforce and economic development. And we in Washington State value this data set, and it's going to help us stabilize employment analysis, as well to look into career progressions and industry shifts within the state and bordering states that we are going to analyze going forward. Through this partnership, our state and all the participating states have the access to very enhanced and extensive data set that remains confidential. And I find that it's very secure and effective way to analyze many of these burning questions that we have on labor market side for supply and demand. As well as it helps alleviate some of the burdens on the states as well as employers for not asking for additional information to be collected and reported through different means. Looking at this current map, currently, as I mentioned, I counted over 33 states, but on this map you can see across the nation the distribution of the participating states and how their involvement ensures we can track labor market across the state lines and borders, and which really help us and offer many of our analysts a complete view of worker mobility and the changes and shifts between geographies as well as industries, wages, and hours, if available. Multi-state efforts really does help us, especially in our Washington State analysis, for that job analysis flow, hiring trends, and retention statistics for industries and locations. Wage records program, quick overview. There, if you have not heard about it yet, there's a way, very unique way to collect this information. Bureau of Labor Statistics signs MOUs with the states and gathers UI or an employment insurance wage records from these states. As you know, UI coverage extends over 96% of all civilian labor force, which really provides broader insight into employment trends. And this is integrated into multi-state workforce database, which we can pull data on for analysis purposes, and it's gathered on quarterly basis. We have other data sources, and the quarterly is not as dominant for multi-state analysis, and it's updated timely. States utilize these wage records for national workforce research, and when I did these analysis with my team, it really helped me analyze different cohorts and benefit our analysis towards impacts of different pandemics, job movements or decreases in mass layoffs in the state, or even hirings, for example, where are those workers coming from within the state or out of the states. Benefits are really is that, enhanced data quality, interstate stabilization, public and BLS benefits for all of us, mobility, equity analysis, policy decisions could be based on this information. And overall, wage records help us track worker mobility, career progression, wage growth, and hours worked over time, which, we can track 5, 10, even 20-year marks for some of the states of worker mobility within the state, industry, wages and hours worked. What a state wage records project looked for the Washington State. Washington State's wage records focus on state-specific workforce trends. We hope to analyze job retention within the state, industry-specific employment movements, looking into the wage hours, wages and hours for those shifts, where workers are moving, which industries they're going to or they're coming from. Are they going for more wages or more hours, or less wages or less hours in the specific analysis? Washington State's Wage Records Project with partnership is really insightful, and we want to gain this insightful information so that we can move forward with our industry retention rates planning, policy changes, or workforce planning. Every industry has its own dynamics of industry shifts, where they hire and where their workers leave to, what wages they offer, and hours that are worked. Is it seasonal or not seasonal industry, and what type of work, full-time, part-time, availability. So with this, we have gathered one of the greatest strengths on this project, which is tracking employment histories across state lines, which usually we couldn't track a specific cohort before. Longitudinal perspective worker mobility. Are these workers moving from Washington State? Are they staying in other states? Are they staying in the same industry in other states, or are they moving elsewhere? Throughout state partnership, cross-state employment moves are visible, and we can analyze these changes. Also, quarterly wages are enabling our analysis on salary fluctuations and workforce earning stability. Further strengthening analysis linking these wage records to other microdata sets that we have within labor market division, and allowing us with this to gain even greater insight into job classification and industry shifts. As you know, with every data set, we have limitations. There are limitations to wage records program. It's very rich workforce insight. However, limitations are like top 2, limited to just participating states. Not all 50 states in the United States participate in the program. Worker residency, for example, employees may reside inside or outside Washington State, affecting data interpretation, workforce mobility inside. Telework, multi-job holders, for example, where many workers telecommute, hold multiple jobs, complicating retention or job switching analysis. Also, in separations, people that leave jobs, they can leave for, move for different geography, or leave the one job in Washington and keep one job in Idaho and Oregon or somewhere else. They can leave for retirement, so they can leave for additional education and training, or they can just simply separate from exit labor force workforce permanently. Also, non-UI covered employment is part of the challenges and limitations. Self-employed workers, commission-based jobs, federal employees are not captured under UI state data, therefore emphasizing that we have this wage records program data, but enhancing with other data sets is critical and important part of the analysis of labor force and workforce dynamics within each one of our states, especially state of Washington. Workers in non-participating states, of course, we cannot look into those workers. Are we, having people going into the states that are not participating, and are they changing industries and wages and so forth, is not part of that analysis, and it's limiting us on full understanding. But overall, wage records remains a very invaluable tool to understanding workforce dynamics. So at the state of Washington, we have focused wage record studies on a couple questions. Are job switchers relocating between Washington, Idaho, and Oregon? Are workers changing industries within the state? And which sectors are most affected? Do wages increase, decrease when workers switch industries and locations? Are workers taking on more or fewer hours after transitioning into industries or locations? So to track the workforce movement before and after, we focused on two cohorts. Observing outflow or workforce of the workforce, we focus on cohort 2019, second quarter, which captures workers pre-pandemic, focusing on movement into Idaho and Oregon across multiple years, going all the way through second quarter 2023. And we're looking at the cohort backwards for new hires into the workforce, into the jobs in state of Washington, which is cohort second quarter 2023. And, understanding at how Washington state is attracting workforce and where are those workers coming from. The structure allows us to compare how the labor market evolves between these two periods, identifying changes in worker mobility, hiring trends, industry shifts over time. And with that said, here's a few results that we have gained from this analysis. On this specific representation, you can see outflow on the first chart and then inflow on the second chart. And we analyze these separations looking forward, and it shows, as you can see, that 30% of workforce declined from second quarter 2019 to second quarter 23, which shows us 69.7% retention rate of the workers within that time period. Over 1 million workers exited workforce jobs in state of Washington during this time, and major pandemic impacts in 2020 showed a decrease of 17.9% of workforce, or about 600,000 separations due to the layoffs or career shifts and retirements in 2020. Gradual workforce separations are shown from 2020 to 2023, where the shrinking or workforce separations came down to 6 to 7% a year, showing and reflecting natural attrition, relocation, and demographic changes. Backward-looking analysis, which shows job hires from cohort 2023, second quarter, shows that very strong workforce inflow into Washington state jobs. Washington state had over 3.6 million jobs in 2023 and gained approximately 1.2 million workers over this period from 2019 to 2023. Post-pandemic hiring boom really occurred from 2022 to 2023, with industries like tech, healthcare, and green energy leading the hiring surge. The net change between separations and hires was about 150,000 jobs, and signaling that we gain more workers and jobs than we have lost in state of Washington. Washington labor market has undergone significant changes between 2019 and 2023. Workforce outflow, when we took it into three different segments here, outflow and inflow. Separations going to non-participating states or exiting database altogether. Separations going to participating states and those that retain the jobs in state of Washington, and then inflow. Hires from non-participating states or individuals new into database, and then hires from participating states and Washington retained workforce. Overall, Washington State retained over 2.4 million individuals from 2019 to 2023, and that separation rate, 23.9% into non-participating rates, states or exiting labor force, was noted for the outflow, and the participating 6.4% was captured in those states. And new hires came from 26.5% came from non-participating states or individuals who are new to the labor market database, or 6.7% came from participating states. As you can see here, we gain more from participating states at 6.7% than we have lost in separations. In this specific dynamic here, you can see that a movement across the some participating states where we have data available. And Oregon is our largest outflow destination for workers at 3.0%, and reflects strong interstate labor mobility. Texas is second largest destination for Washington workers. Idaho is the third largest. Other states, including Florida, Montana, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania, saw gradual workforce inflow from state of Washington, while the largest percentage shares jump was in Oregon and Texas from 2019 to 2023. Inflow, on the other hand, shows that even though we lose a significant number of people to Oregon, we gain a significant number of people from Oregon into our labor market. So we have very healthy exchange of workforce between these two states. Texas was the second largest important supplier of workforce to the state of Washington, followed by Idaho, according to the states participating and data available. Idaho remains one of the hotspots for us, and we actually lost more workers to Idaho than Idaho giving us workers at the same time period. Declining workforce migration was seen from far east states like Florida and Minnesota, where it shows actually, when you analyze this, shows less dependence on overall national recruitment efforts in many different industries. What we're looking at here are industry changes and demographics. Industry retention rates in the state of Washington for those that retain jobs reflects different structures of each industry. Agricultural has the lowest retention rate at 60.6%, largely due to seasonal employment patterns. Excuse me. The information sector maintains the highest retention rate at 75.9%, showing the stability in long-term employment. Seasonal industries such as agricultural, hospitality, and retail trade experience higher worker turnover rates, while industries offering year-round full-time employment tend to retain workers more efficiently. And the labor force movements is larger in those seasonal industries than year-round full-time employment industries. So looking at the characteristics of workforce within state of Washington here, of course, 6.4% from cohort 2019 individuals left to participating states. But of those people, 69.8% individuals that stayed in the state of Washington jobs, 30.6% of these individuals actually changed industries within a 4-year period. Doing worker, analysis on industries, when they changed the industries, on average, quarterly wages increased by 9.4% for the workers when they changed industries within the state of Washington, while hourly wages increased by 13.4%. Also, workers that changed the industries, on average, actually worked less hours by 2.8%. Now looking at the workforce that went into Idaho and Oregon for work, and did they actually change a job industries? 62% of all workers that went to Oregon changed industries compared to 64% going to Idaho within the 4-year period. And workers that changed industries in Idaho and Oregon actually saw a decrease in quarterly wages, 18.7% for Idaho, and 11.9% in Oregon. While at the same time, data only available for hours worked in Oregon, a number of hours worked quarterly in workers from state of Washington that entered industries in Oregon decreased by 19.6%. Just the outflow to Idaho, 60.7% of all of workers that entered Idaho jobs entered top 5 industries: education, healthcare, retail trade, professional business services, leisure, hospitality, and construction. As you can see, gradual increases over the years in industry changes and shifts within state of Idaho. Oregon is similar, just different shift in positions for those industries. 61.7% of all those entering the Oregon jobs from state of Washington, they enter top 5 industries: professional, construction, retail, education, leisure, hospitality, and retail trade. The only shift here that's different for Oregon is that latest 2023 quarter drop for shift in different industry dropped from the 2022 to 2023 for about 1.2%. One of the key aspects of the project is understanding wage records data compares to other workforce data tools. And I personally utilize many different tools that's available from our state labor markets and other data sources in the state, as well as state federal agencies that provide data tools and analysis. One of the tools I utilize all the time is LEHD program on the map, where I look into inflow and outflow, and then job to job flows. So I found a couple of differences and actually reasons to utilize all of them when I do mobility and even shifts in industries and demographics. Well, while Wage Records program, for example, gives the state wage records forming multi-state longitudinal workforce analysis, which is useful for regional and national labor force research. On the map tool primarily focuses on worker commuting patterns and their employment location, helping us understand labor mobility, home to work location, work to home locations. Job to job flow, for example, tracks worker transition between jobs, offering insight into job switching behavior, wage fluctuations, industries. There's always benefits to all of the tools, and one of the benefits that I find in on the map is the small number of industries, and just looking at home to work analysis. And also job to job flow tool helps me understand different demographics and characteristics of workforce for multi-data source tracked workforce movements and how they are shifting over time. What is next for state of Washington? Where do we go from here? We have a couple things in mind to look into as opportunities and possibilities. We are looking at wage and hour data analysis, examining how workers move within and out of state of Washington job market and across industries. Also, comparative cohort studies. We have compared separations and hires, second quarter 2023 for hires and second quarter 2019 for separations. But we're looking into comparing recession periods like second quarter 2006 and going 5 years upward. How does that differ from pandemic impacts on second quarter 2019 labor force movements and patterns? Diving deep into movement studies, shifts between industries, locations, just looking to attrition rates, future job market strategies for recruitment purposes from employers, as well as for finding the jobs for job seekers. Data enhancement, licensing information, wage classification, demographics data will always enhance workforce analytics. And right now, state of Washington is one of the few states that's collecting wage records, enhanced SOC coding, and job titles. And we hope that wage records will be able to look, be enhanced with that going forward, so we can look into not only industry shifts and movements, but as well as occupational shifts and movements for our workforce. We hope to, utilize this for strategic planning for education programs, industry planning and development, recruitment of businesses, enhancement of entrepreneurs, environment, and of course, policy decisions. We are hoping to do even more, but none of this research, of course, is not possible. I am one of the people that speak about this, but it is a dedication of multi-team efforts. Employment Security Department team, which encompasses Jeff Robinson, Doug Tweedy, and Ian Smith, worked really hard on gathering and analyzing data and establishing the MOUs and working with everything with the BLS, as well as BLS team, Rachel Veer, John Shilp, and Rebecca Horn, who worked in and out every day on helping us gather this information and create the study and make it possible to see our analysis come to fruition. And then finally, thank you actually for listening to us and participating in today's webinar. I'm very happy to be able to share with this, and there's so much more that I can gain from this information, but in this time, this is all I can share with you. And, if you have any questions at this time, I'd like to open the floor for any questions. I welcome any thoughts, insights, and discussions on this topic.
Thank you, Aisha. Before we get to the questions, as a reminder, the presentation will be accessible on the Census Academy website at census.gov/academy under the webinar tab within 30 days. The link has been added to the chat. Again, please type all of your questions in the Q&A and keep your questions pertaining to the presentation. The chat has been disabled to our attendees. So let's give it a second for the questions to come in.
I'm seeing a lot of applause, so that's a great thing.
Okay, we do have a question. Just 1 second, please. Where do you recommend obtaining average wages for states and healthcare positions, and what are the best recommended resources?
Average wages?
Yes, for states in healthcare positions.
So for healthcare industry, any health industry, we have occupational employment wage estimates, which are published by each state by under umbrella of Bureau of Labor Statistics. When you search the respectful state, if you find labor market information, search for occupational employment wage estimates records, which is going to give you occupational information on that specific occupation of your interest, a number of people employed in that occupation, and wages per percentile average by hour and annual averages. If you're not able to specifically look into one specific state, I would encourage you to look into Bureau of Labor Statistics, occupational employment and wage estimates for that specific question.
Thanks very much. I'd be curious if there is residential information attached to these records.
Can you say that again?
I'd be curious if there is residential information attached to these records. Are there residential information attached to the records?
Yeah, so wage records don't have any residential locations because these wage records come from employers. And wage records collect, you know, a number of hours worked, for example, and how much you're paid. As far as I know, no state collects residential information for the employees on their wage records. The only enhancement so far to the wage records is addition of occupational classification in the state of Washington and a couple other states, but that's all we have. For the residential study, I would encourage you to explore that on the map, inflow outflow, where you can look into where people reside and where they go to work for that specific question. So far, enhancing wage records with that will be awesome, but we don't have that at this time.
Is the data available to the public?
The wage records are not available to the public for mining. It's available for the participating states for analysis, and it's managed by Bureau of Labor Statistics wage records team.
What is your definition of a separation and a new hire?
So definition for this specific study is for separations is is individuals that were not shown in the jobs after that cohort was selected. So 2019 cohort and anybody that left the jobs in state of Washington after that is counted as separated. As well as for hires, we look into cohort 2023, and if those individuals are in that cohort, when did they show up in our statistics before? So going from 2019 to 2023, when they entered our database as new hires. Where can we find the job-to-job flow data from this pilot study? Is it available in the Washington ESD site? The only available resource right now is my presentation and studies that I have done so far for the job to inflow and outflow studies. We don't have any official reports as of yet, but we are working on it.
Did you keep the multiple job holders in your analysis?
We did keep that on mind when we were analyzing with, and we did count how many of the official cohort is holding multiple jobs within the state or across the state borders in participating states. So we did keep that in mind, but we did not separate it from actual counts.
To access the data for analysis, who do we contact?
For the data analysis for any state, if you're a researcher and this is only available for states level research, I would contact Bureau of Labor Statistics wage records team.
This concludes our question and answer session.
All right, well, thank you, Tanja. And thank you, Aisha. Before we close out, Aisha, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Again, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to participate and share our findings and our efforts in labor market research. We do hope to continue this and showcase even more findings from the current data sets that we have and focus on the post-pandemic, during pandemic analysis and job shifts within state of Washington and industries alike. So going forward, we hope to see you again and share anything that we can and hopefully give you insights on what you could do moving forward with all the research and tools and data available from state and federal levels.
Aisha, on behalf of the LED webinar series, thank you for your fascinating presentation. So this concludes the May LED webinar. Join us next month when Nathan Goldschlag presents Inventors and the Allocation of Talent. I also wanted to invite all of you to our 2025 Local Employment Dynamics Partnership Hybrid Workshop on September 3rd through the 4th from noon to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. More details to come. Upon exiting this webinar, you will receive an evaluation. Please go ahead and fill that out so we can better serve you. We appreciate that you take the time to answer the questions. And on behalf of the U.S. Census Bureau, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.